Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
And thank you for joining us once again for All Indiana Politics. And we start today by talking potential pay increases for Indiana teachers. After nearly 2 years of work, the state's Teacher Pay Commission has issued its report. More than 36 recommendations that include cost cutting, spending shifts, and new taxes. The total cost, an estimated $600 million, enough to boost the average pay for teachers to $60,000 per year.
Needs to be an average, beginning and an average teacher salary in the state of Indiana that is equal to or better than all of our competition in the Midwest. And so we'll continue to. That's what this report, the commission's report, is all about. It lays out a lot of different alternatives, some of which would be a lot more digestible by some than others.
And let's welcome in now Republican State Representative Bob Benning, the chair of the House Education Committee. Bob, always good to see you, sir. Thank you for taking some time. So you've seen the recommendations from the Teacher Pay Commission. Your thoughts?
Well, obviously, teacher pay is a priority for me and for our caucus and actually for the General Assembly. I very much appreciate the work of the commission. They spent 18 months driving down to come up with 37 points they brought to us. And I've attended a couple of their public forums. So I'm very appreciative of what they've put together. It gives us kind of a roadmap to look at. It's a lot of data. And I can't say that I've gone through every single point of it. So I think a lot of us are still trying to digest exactly what they've provided to us at this point in time.
At the end of the day, though, they're essentially recommending pay raises. Can the state afford to pay for significant teacher raises during the pandemic, or is this money that's going to have to come from local governments and districts?
I think if you look at the report, it's kind of a balance between state and local. So I think it's obviously what they're suggesting is you look at it in several different ways. I think the commission also recognized that the pandemic has impacted state, federal, local funding across the board. So it's probably unrealistic to think that the state's just tomorrow going to fix the problem. It didn't happen in a day, so it's not going to be resolved in a day. But I think it's a roadmap for us to look at in terms of trying to find solutions to really focus on elevating teacher salaries and getting the brightest and best into schools so that our kids are more successful as they move forward.
That being said, does this week's new revenue projection make it a little bit easier to maybe consider more funding for education?
I think it's clear that we're all focused on more funding for K-12. I know the governor's agenda came out suggesting that. I was on a panel this morning advocating that I think we're going to do everything in our power to make sure K-12 gets increases. I think the other thing that's still unknown, that obviously the forecast was helpful, but we don't know where the federal government's going to come in terms of additional stimulus money. I know I'm hopeful that we'll have something before the end of the year, but my guess is that will not be the last of stimulus that will be coming forth to the state. So I think there's other things that could play into it, which will hopefully make the next biennium a little bit easier for us to navigate through. But the forecast was at least more positive than I think many thought it would be.
Yeah, it certainly was. So before we let you go, Bob, one last question for you. Will we still have some schools in virtual classes after the first of the year? Will the legislature approve 100% funding for those districts as well?
No question. There's commitment by both Speaker Houston and Pro Tem Bray that one of the first things that we're going to do is approve language that will make sure our schools receive 100% of funding. So regardless of whether they're virtual or in face-to-face. In terms of what happens after January 1, my guess is we're going to have a continued situation. We're going to have a variety of face-to-face, virtual, and probably hybrid. So until we finally are able to have broad access to vaccines and have a significant impact in terms of mitigating the impact of COVID, I'm sure that's going to be standard norm. Hopefully this time, well, hopefully by the start of school next year, we will be able to start in a traditional format face-to-face.
30 seconds left. I lied to you. I have one more question. Your prediction, will there be teacher pay raises in the budget if it passes this year?
Well, if we actually in 2019 had a record increase in K-12, almost $760 million in annual increases. Teachers across the state received pay raises, which was we were very pleased with that. We don't set, at least today, we don't set those pay increases. We increase the funding to K-12, and the decision is made at a local level as to how those dollars are spent. So I'm very hopeful that we'll have solid increases for K-12. We'll be advocating for that, which would also then mean there would be increases for teachers across the board.
State Representative Bob Benning, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
So let's bring in Democratic State Senator Fadi Kadora now. Fadi, good to see you. Thank you for taking some time. Your reaction to the Teacher Pay Commission's report this week?
It's an excellent step in the right direction to be sure that we give this issue the important attention that it needs. Indiana is constantly struggling with the issue of compensating teachers appropriately to keep us competitive, not only with other states in the Midwest region, but also even internally within our state. We truly have a retention problem in terms of attracting and retaining teachers. So I truly welcome the report. The 37 strategies that have been recommended to fund teachers. I think you'll find those who support some of those recommendations, and there will be folks who will dislike and oppose some of these recommendations, but I'm encouraged that we're moving in the right direction.
In your opinion, do the recommendations go far enough, or is this not enough?
I think that it is critical for us to have good conversations with the governor's office and with my colleagues in the Senate and the House to be sure that we come up with a sustainable solution. And I look forward to this upcoming General Assembly session to address these issues. What is clear is that, and what I'm encouraged by, is that I've heard the leaders of both chambers, I've heard the governor and the governor's staff indicate and signal that this is an important topic that we must address. Because I firmly believe that if we don't invest up front in our educational system, then we will pay at the back end of the system. And what I mean by this is that if we don't invest in many generations of young Hoosiers to be educated and ready for a 21st century workforce, then in the future, we will be confronted with a systematic problem of individuals not being able to complete post-secondary education or attain certificates, whether it's vocational training or higher degrees that equip them to join our 21st century workforce. So it's a smart investment to be sure that we attract good teachers, we compensate them well, because data has shown that good teachers have an impact on the quality of education. And when we compensate teachers well, we will be able to retain excellent teachers who will invest in the future of our kids.
Among the recommendations calling for school districts to put local tax increases to a vote, is that state lawmakers, in your opinion, passing the buck, for lack of a better term?
So I think it is not a systematic solution. There are many communities across our state that will not be able to afford or to increase their local taxes. And some of these blanket suggestions, including increasing taxes, sometimes they might not account for those who are on limited income or those who might not be able to afford supporting such taxes. So I'm extremely supportive of any strategy, innovative strategies that basically allows the state to sustainably and systematically invest in our teacher pay without burdening our local communities, especially those who might not be able to afford local tax increases. So I think my message is that all solutions should be on the table, and the ultimate outcome that we should all agree to and work hard to accomplish is that to make Indiana a very competitive state to attract and to retain qualified teachers.
State Senator Fadi Kadora, thank you for your time.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
And coming up, the former mayor of South Bend and former presidential candidate gets a prominent role in the Biden White House. Reaction to that nomination of Pete Buttigieg next on All Indiana Politics.
today, I'm proud to nominate its newest member. For Secretary of Transportation, I nominate Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Mayor Pete may soon be in charge of the country's planes, trains, and automobiles. The president-elect this week announcing, as you heard it there, Pete Buttigieg as his choice for Transportation Secretary. If confirmed by the Senate, he would be the first ever openly gay cabinet member to be Senate confirmed.
And what I admire about Pete is he's always clear about who he is, what he believes, and how he wants to bring people in, not exclude them. He's able to walk into any room, leave people inspired with his ability to describe an America that's best for us, all of us. An America that's hopeful, bold, creative, inclusive.
America has given this administration a mandate to build back better. And step one in building back better, literally, is to build. Americans shouldn't settle for less than our peers in the developed world when it comes to our roads and bridges, our railways and transit systems. The U.S. should lead the way. And I know that in this administration, we will.
And the reaction now from Indiana Republican Senator Todd Young, saying as a former city leader here in Indiana, Pete understands how critical infrastructure is to growth and opportunity. It will be good to have a Hoosier serving in this capacity. All Indiana Politics team also spoke with retiring Indiana Representative Susan Brooks.
Obviously, with Indiana being the crossroads of America, we want as much focus and attention on our infrastructure as possible. So it is good for Indiana to have someone like him to be advocating and improving the infrastructure of the country. I find it interesting that transportation is what President-elect Biden has chosen him for. It's going to be a significantly important role to play because we have such tremendous infrastructure needs.
Coming up, the president-elect takes a verbal swipe at Republicans from Indiana. That's next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Republican April Gregory and Democrat Brian Gaddy. Good to see you both. And I want to start today with something that we talked about last week here on the show, guys. Bear with me for a moment. The Supreme Court unanimously rejecting the GOP and Texas lawsuits challenging vote results in 4 states. Now, Indiana's current Attorney General, the Attorney General-elect, and 5 Republican House members from Indiana filed their support for that suit. And this is what President-elect Biden had to say to them this week.
This legal maneuver was an effort by elected officials and one group of states to try to get the Supreme Court to wipe out the votes of more than 20 million Americans in other states. It's a position so extreme, we've never seen it before. A position that refused to respect the will of the people, refused to respect the rule of law, and refused to honor our Constitution.
So, Brian, let's start with you here. This is the strongest that we've heard the president-elect talk about President Trump since Election Day, right?
Exactly.
So your thoughts on what he had to say?
Well, he's right. President-elect Biden is absolutely correct. These were specious lawsuits. They weren't based in facts or evidence. When these attorneys had an opportunity to bring facts before a court of law, they never did present any evidence or facts. But they would always be quick to go out to a camera and give an impromptu press conference and then say, "Oh, there's all this cheating and theft, and the Democrats are trying to steal the election." But before they went in a court of law, they never said that. Why? Because they know they would have been sanctioned by the judge, or worse, even disbarred had they done that.
It's a fair point. April, is the president-elect's criticism fair? I mean, Trump continues to call it a stolen election even after the Electoral College voted.
Well, I find it extremely interesting that prior to the election, it was the Democrats that were cautioning the American people about a red mirage, and then all of a sudden on election, the day after the election, Joe gets a huge dump in the middle of the night, and the preferred candidate of the Democrats won. So, of course, they're not going to be honest about what's going on right now. I mean, the Supreme Court, it's unfortunate that they didn't take this case. I mean, even Pennsylvania, they filed an amicus brief, and so they admitted that their own state did not follow election protocol. So there certainly is evidence, and we've seen things with Dominion in Michigan and votes being found.
Wait, April,
So,
most judges said there isn't, though.
well, I mean, you don't just pull a suitcase of ballots out in the middle of the night, and that's not how elections go. I mean, this is about finding and making sure we have a free and fair election and transparent elections. This is our democracy. It's bigger than just this particular election. We have to make sure going forward, everything's fair going forward. It's not so much about overturning this election as it is what's going on. And now you have 74 million Americans who are wondering what really is happening, and that's what we have to figure out.
Yeah, it's a big number. Brian, Attorney General Curtis Hill and the Attorney General-elect Todd Rokita both support this. Your thoughts?
Well, Curtis Hill is still continuing to embarrass Indiana. I mean, that's just for another discussion. But he's continuing his embarrassment of our state. Todd Rokita is just being political. They both know that President-elect Biden and soon-to-be President Biden won this election. They know it. They're just playing politics. And Curtis Hill ought to stop embarrassing Indiana. He's done that enough.
April, 30 seconds on that, on a response to that.
The people of Indiana want to make sure that this is a free and fair election. There's transparency. Every ballot that should be counted is counted. And that is absolutely what our Attorney General and our future Attorney General have to do.
All right, let's move the conversation forward here, guys. Pete Buttigieg gets a cabinet nod this week for Transportation Secretary. We talked about it a little while ago. Brian, this is shaping up to be the most diverse cabinet in history.
Yes, it is. I'm very proud of President-elect Biden's cabinet. And Mayor Pete is a fellow Hoosier Democrat. I'm very proud of him. And he's going to do a great job as Secretary of Transportation. Indiana's the crossroads of America. Transportation is very important in this state, and there's no one better to have in that position than a Hoosier who understands that. And Mayor Pete definitely does.
And April, you've been critical of Buttigieg's record as mayor in the past, right?
Yes. No, I think anybody who's been through South Bend knows that their roads are literally crumbling. They are worse than Indianapolis roads. And the fact that Biden thinks this is the best person to lead the Department of Transportation doesn't even make sense. The way this works is Biden and the Democrats have a list of people that they have to give a seat to, someone they've made a deal with, someone they owe something, someone that's an up-and-comer, and this is what Buttigieg is. So it just is like Joe Biden was playing pin the tail on the Department of Transportation Secretary, and Buttigieg won. So it just doesn't make any sense.
Your response, Brian, real quick?
Well, he's got those picks because he won the election. I'm glad that April and the Republicans are finally coming to that reality. But Mayor Pete is an excellent choice for Secretary of Transportation. And why are our roads in Indiana so bad? Because of poor Republican leadership.
I have a minute left. I want to get a quick response from both of you. Governor Holcomb spelled out his 2021 agenda this week, including transportation, infrastructure, and education. April, your thoughts after seeing it?
Yeah, he is doing a lot of things just to keep Indiana moving along. We're in a really great position, as we have been for the past decade, or more than a decade, thanks to previous governors. And he's continuing to keep the ball rolling and doing the things that need to be done. Of course, the teacher and the education pay is going to be the hot topic, the big deal. Right. But everything else is important too.
Brian, 30 seconds.
Well, Governor Holcomb has to understand he has to work with Indiana Democrats. We're a crucial part of the politics of this state. And if he wants to get anything accomplished, he needs to work with Indiana Democrats. And I hope he does that.
April, Brian, thank you very much. Happy holidays. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Phil.
All Indiana Politics comes coming up after this. And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Remember, we'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, including our look back on the year in Indiana politics. You can also find our show every week on our Facebook page and on wishtv.com. For All Indiana Politics, have a great rest of your weekend and have a safe and happy holiday.